Hey there, movie buffs. You ever catch yourself watching a movie and wonder how in the world they actually make movies?
It is pretty amazing how it all comes together.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So today we're diving deep into Filmmaking for Dummies by Brian Michael Stoller.
Great book.
It's a great book. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're not trying to be a filmmaker,
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see kind of what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, this whole process.
It is a process, and this book is a really great guide for anyone kind of curious about it or wants to dip their toes in.
Absolutely.
So one of the things the book really emphasizes is that good movie ideas can come from anywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it could be something you read. It could be like a crazy family story.
Yeah. Dreams.
Dreams. I mean, you never know.
Never know.
What's a movie that you've seen where you thought, that was such a crazy idea? I wonder where they came up with that.
Well, Catch Me If You Can comes to mind. I mean, who would have thought
Yeah.
that was based on a true story? And I think it just goes to show you that truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
Stranger than fiction sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, but what if your brilliant movie idea does involve like really elaborate costumes and historical sets and all of that?
Well, that's when you have to keep in mind the budget,
The budget.
because that can get very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
The book actually advises against doing a period piece
Right.
if you're on a shoestring budget, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's not always as glamorous as it appears on screen.
No, it's not. But even if you're not doing a period piece, the book stresses how important scheduling is in filmmaking.
Oh, absolutely. Time is money, right? Yeah.
And the more organized you are up front, the smoother the production will be. We're talking about like breaking down each scene in terms of location, equipment, the whole 9 yards.
I didn't even know this, but there's actually software that filmmakers use now to help with scheduling.
Oh yeah, there's some great tools available now that can really streamline that whole process.
And speaking of tools and resources, that kind of brings us to the, I don't know, maybe not so glamorous side of filmmaking, which is the money,
Yeah, the financing part.
the financing. So the book talks about how filmmakers can get creative with financing. Like, did you know that bartering isn't just for trading your old DVDs anymore?
Right, product placement.
Product placement, I mean, that's a big one.
It's a win-win. The filmmaker gets some extra funding and the company gets their product featured in a movie. Exactly. Everyone wins. But even if you were working with a really, really limited budget, the book says it's still crucial to have contracts in place,
Oh, we're 100%.
you know, to protect yourself and your investors.
Especially in this industry, you want to make sure everything's in writing up front. A deal memo, that kind of thing.
Speaking of deal memos, have you ever had to use one?
It's like that old saying, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
That's a good way to put it.
You never know what could happen down the line, so it's always best to be prepared.
I like that. Be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got your killer idea. You've somehow managed to secure the financing.
Yeah.
You've got your contracts and your lawyers all lined up.
What's next?
Now it's time to actually make the movie.
The fun part.
And that's where things get really exciting. But before you can shout action, you got to visualize this whole thing, right?
Exactly. And the book really emphasizes the importance of storyboards in that process. Have you ever worked with storyboards?
You know, I haven't. It seems like something that would be really helpful.
They're like a visual roadmap for your film. It's one thing to describe a scene with words, but when you can actually see it drawn out, it makes it so much easier for everyone to be on the same page.
So it's like a comic book version of the movie.
Exactly. It's like a blueprint for each scene. And it's really cool. The book even mentions that Steven Spielberg uses them.
No way, even Spielberg. Wow, so they really are a valuable tool for filmmakers of all levels. Okay, so let's talk about special effects, because that's something that always wows me in movies.
Oh, special effects. Where do we even begin?
Right. I mean, remember those old disaster movies where they used to build like these incredibly detailed miniature models to create those like large-scale destruction scenes?
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing what they could achieve back then without all the fancy CGI we have today.
I know, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And speaking of CGI, the book even talks about how that technology has really changed the game for filmmakers.
Oh, absolutely. CGI has opened up a whole new world of possibilities. Now filmmakers can create just about anything they can imagine, and it looks incredibly realistic.
It's pretty incredible, right?
Uh-huh.
But the book does make a good point that even though we have all this technology at our fingertips, special effects should always serve the story.
Right. They shouldn't be a distraction or just there for the sake of being flashy. It's all about finding that balance and using those effects to enhance the storytelling.
It's like that old saying, less is more,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes the simplest effects can be the most impactful.
Exactly. But let's not forget about the other essential element that brings movies to life. Sound.
Oh, sound. It's so important. I mean, think about how different a movie would be without any sound effects or music.
It would be like watching a silent film. And while those have their place in film history, let's be real, most of us want to hear those explosions and car chases and those soaring musical score.
Exactly. It just wouldn't be the same.
Hmm.
You know what always blows my mind? Foley artists.
Ah, yes. The masters of sound.
The book talks about how they create all those everyday sounds that we might not even think about, like footsteps, rustling leaves, even the clinking of ice in a glass. They recreate all of that in a studio.
And they make it look so easy. But it's a real skill to be able to synchronize those sounds perfectly with the action on screen. They're artists in their own right.
They really are. And then, of course, there's music, which can make or break a scene.
Absolutely. The right music can set the mood, build tension, heighten emotions. It's an incredibly powerful storytelling tool.
Speaking of powerful storytelling tools, we can't forget about editing. I mean, that's where the movie really comes together, right?
Absolutely. Editing is like the invisible art form. You don't always notice it when it's done well, but you definitely notice it when it's not. It's the editor's job to take all that raw footage, all those different takes, and assemble them into a cohesive and compelling narrative.
It's like they're piecing together a puzzle.
Right. Exactly. It's a very intricate and detailed process. The book delves into the world of editing software and how it has transformed the way films are cut together. We've come a long way from those old school editing machines.
It's amazing how technology has changed every aspect of filmmaking. But even with all the fancy software in the world, it still takes a skilled editor to make those cuts feel seamless and to create a story that flows.
Absolutely. It's about having a keen eye for detail, understanding pacing and rhythm, and knowing how to evoke emotions through the way the scenes are cut together. It's a real craft.
So you've got your movie edited, you've got your sound design, your music, everything's all coming together. But it still doesn't feel quite finished, does it?
Right. It's missing that final polish. And that's where those finishing touches come in. Color correction, sound mixing, those final special effects tweaks, all those little details that really elevate a film to the next level.
They're like the icing on the cake, right?
Precisely. And just like with a cake, you can't rush those finishing touches. They take time and precision to get just right.
It's so true. But let's say you've poured your heart and soul into your movie. It's finally finished, it's polished, it's ready to be seen by the world. Now what? How do you get it in front of an audience?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And luckily, the book delves into that too. So it talks about the importance of marketing and distribution, which essentially means getting your film seen by as many people as possible.
Exactly. And in today's digital age, there are more ways than ever to get your film out there.
You've got film festivals, streaming services, social media. It's a whole new world.
It is, and the book gives some really great advice for navigating that world, from creating a compelling trailer to building buzz on social media.
So even if you're not trying to become the next Spielberg, there's still so much valuable information in this book.
Absolutely, and I think one of the most important takeaways is that filmmaking is a collaborative art form.
It really is. It takes a village.
Exactly. It takes a team of talented and passionate individuals all working together to bring a vision to life. And whether you're interested in directing, screenwriting, cinematography, editing, or any other aspect of filmmaking, there's a place for you in this industry.
That's so inspiring. So if you're feeling creatively stifled or you're just curious about what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite movies,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out this book.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who's ever dreamed of making movies.
And, you know, even with the best laid plans, things don't always go according to plan in the world of filmmaking, right?
That's an understatement.
It's true. So what happens when those unexpected challenges pop up?
Well, that's where experience, problem-solving skills, and a good sense of humor come in handy.
A good sense of humor, for sure. The book actually dedicates a whole section to troubleshooting common filmmaking problems.
Because let's face it, something always comes up.
Always.
You might have equipment malfunctions, bad weather, actors getting sick, you name it, it's probably happened on a film set at some point.
It's like Murphy's Law was invented on a film set.
Pretty much. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong, especially when you're on a tight schedule and every minute counts.
I can only imagine. Have you had any, major on-set disasters that you had to kind of think on your feet and figure out a way to salvage the situation?
Oh, I've got stories. Let's just say I've learned to embrace the unexpected and to be adaptable, because in filmmaking, you never know what's going to be thrown your way.
That's a great point. It's not just about having a plan, it's about being able to adjust that plan on the fly when things inevitably change.
Exactly. And sometimes those unexpected detours can lead to even more creative solutions and a better final product.
So true. Sometimes the best ideas come from those happy accidents. But even with the best crew, the best equipment, and a whole lot of luck, filmmaking is still hard work.
Oh, absolutely. It's demanding both creatively and logistically. There are long hours, tight deadlines, and a lot of pressure to get it right.
But at the end of the day, it's also incredibly rewarding, right? To see your vision come to life on screen, to share your story with an audience. There's really nothing quite like it.
You're absolutely right. And I think that sense of accomplishment, that shared experience of creating something special, is what makes all the challenges worth it. It's a true labor of love.
So for those of you listening who are feeling inspired to maybe pick up a camera and tell your own stories, what are some key takeaways we want you to remember from our deep dive into the world of filmmaking?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to just go for it. You don't need permission to be creative, and you don't need fancy equipment or a Hollywood budget to start making movies.
That's so important. Just start creating with what you have, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn as you go. That's how you grow as a filmmaker.
Embrace the learning process. And remember, filmmaking is a collaborative art form. So find your people, build your team, and support each other's creative visions.
Absolutely. And never stop learning, never stop exploring, never stop telling your stories. The world needs your unique voice and your perspective.
Beautifully said. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into the fascinating world of filmmaking. We hope you've enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at how movies get made and that you're feeling inspired to maybe create something amazing of your own.
And if you're looking for a comprehensive and accessible guide to help you on your filmmaking journey, I highly recommend checking out Filmmaking for Dummies by Brian Michael Stoller.
That's a fantastic resource.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll be watching your movie and wondering, how did they do that?
Now that would be something.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep watching those movies.
And don't forget the popcorn.